we help startups to hire the talent. या तो MBA के बाद धंधा करना है या MBA से पहले धंधा करना है, बट धंधा करना है. पैसा तो कमा सकते हैं if you have conviction and
Hello everyone, welcome to the brand new episode of the Inquisitive Investor, a podcast for the investors by the investors, where we get into discussions with our guests about their personal finance, their background and their investment strategies, so that we all can learn and improve our strategies in the finance and investments. Today we have Mr. Amit Agrawal. He has worked in various companies like Tata Steel, M Caffeine, Oyo Rooms, Go Mechanic, and later on he started his own company named ConsultBay that started as a hiring staffing agency but later on got into augmentation staffing and other innovative products around AI. So welcoming Amit Agrawal. Welcome to the show.
Thanks Ashish. It's a pleasure having here in the show.
While I try to explain and give a good introduction about yourself, would you like to mention some other things about you that I might have missed?
Sure, I think you covered the basic points. Starting my journey, I passed out from IIT Dhanbad in 2011, got a pre-placement offer, went to Tata Steel, worked there for around three and a half years. Later on moved into startup world, wherein started my journey from Oyo, went to Pep Salons, which is now M Caffeine, then moved back again to Oyo, had a short stint at Quicker and then Go Mechanic. Finally, in October 2020, I founded ConsultBay, and at ConsultBay, we are primarily a B2B company, wherein we do three things. The number one is we help startups to hire the talents, which are mid to senior level of talents. These can be tech as well as non-tech. The second is we also do staff augmentation, specifically for the tech talents. And the third is we are building AI/ML product solutions for B2B companies, which are again focused on sales and support functions.
Got it.
So that's the quick background and a brief about me.
Got it. Thank you very much, Amit. And I'm really fascinated by the startup that you have made, and that too bootstrapped, which I think is a dream for so many folks, right? They want to start up, but I think there are many challenges in that journey. So maybe let's start with this topic directly. That how did you start? Okay, maybe not when like you in October 2020 when you started, but when did this idea come? Was it an idea from always, or how what all decision and what all financial decision and discussions that you had right to start it?
Right. So if I go back and remember my days at college, right, there used to be an entrepreneurial cell, right, and मुझे लगता था कि क्या बकवास है, क्या कर रहे हैं, मतलब there was no conviction कि what is an entrepreneur or will I ever do something as an entrepreneur or not. But eventually as time passed away, right, I ventured into Tata Steel. I got a pre-placement offer, वहाँ पर काम किया 3-3.5 साल, and then I realized कि this is not a journey wherein I can live for a longer period of time, right? Because the aspirations were high, right? And eventually when I entered into the professional journey, then I realized how people have transformed their journey, right? How they have ventured into entrepreneurship, what is businesses. Though I come from a business background wherein 80% of the janta in my family do business, being a baniya, right? But when I was in Tata Steel, then eventually I realized कि यार business तो करना है, right? Now there were two options कि क्या पहले MBA करना है या सीधे business करना है.
बिल्कुल.
Then I gave it a chance कि यार सारी जनता तो MBA कर ही रही है, चलो GMAT का एग्जाम देते हैं. GMAT का एग्जाम दिया, got a score of 650.
650 or 15?
650.
Same. This is the same score I got. But
right. Then I realized कि again it's a journey of another 6 months. But eventually I got connected with two of my friends who were working at Oyo, and thought of joining at Oyo and learn startups, because या तो MBA के बाद धंधा करना है या MBA से पहले धंधा करना है, but धंधा करना है, this is for sure, it's clear.
Got it.
So that's how I ventured into Oyo, and when I went to Oyo and I see the cultural difference that existed when I was working at Tata Steel and Oyo was massive, right? Here, the culture, the type of people or the energy or the type of thing the guys are doing, and what people do at an established organization is just to follow up the processes, right? So there was huge learning, and then eventually one of my batchmate Tarun, who is the founder of M Caffeine, right? He called me one day and said, "Ki yaar, let's come on board, and we are trying to solve the problem of scaling the salons at scales." So we were basically building the chain of salons. So at that time it was Pep Salons, and I joined as one of the founding members at Pep Salon.
I would like to stop you there, and
yeah.
I would want to know, see, these decisions, right, that you wanted to do an MBA before
right.
you start up, or you went into a startup eventually with an idea ki you'll start someday. We really would want to understand, since we are inquisitive, right? We would want to understand how were you doing financially back then? How were you thinking about MBA fee of the program, and eventually starting up? Like, were you like very rich to start with, or you were saving it all along? So what were those thoughts?
So if you see my journey till now, I have not taken any loan, right? In terms of family background, I don't have any liabilities as such. I have my brother who earns, I have my father who is now retired, but there is no liability as such in the family. And while working at Tata Steel, it was a decent amount of saving, right? Because कोई जगह नहीं होती थी वहाँ पर खर्च करने के लिए.
You're in Jamshedpur, I'm assuming?
Not in Jamshedpur. It was in the mines area. So it was Joda, Noamundi, Gopalpur. It's a remote area wherein you have iron ore mines or the steel plant, which is upcoming steel plants, right? So in that case, you don't have much of the places where you spend a lot of money, right? And that's how we have, I had a bit of savings. So that is one of the backing factor. Plus the family background is also decent, wherein in case I need money, there is family to support me always, and they trust a lot. But when I told them ki I want to leave Tata Steel and join an early stage startup, right? Though the support was less, but eventually I managed and I moved further in the
But
life.
They were okay with the MBA? And
yeah, they were okay with MBA ki yaar, जो भी फीस लगेगी, अगर लोन लेना पड़ेगा तो ले लेंगे, नहीं लेना पड़ेगा तो भी we can manage that. Right.
Got it.
So that was the prime thinking in terms of financial.
Were there thoughts like this is a startup, will it pay, will it not pay, and how long will it sustain?
Right. So when I joined Oyo, again no one knew Oyo, right? They recently raised funds, but people in 2014-15, in case if you see our parents, right, they did not know much about startups at that time, right? Because startups were evolving. So there was hesitation in their mind ki yaar pata nahi what the future would be. But again, when I left Oyo and I joined M Caffeine or Pep Salons, right, it was a pure play guts decision wherein I need to learn how a startup from a scratch is being built.
So you joined them as an employee?
I joined them as a founding member, wherein I did not took any salary, right? For a 1 year, I did not took any salary, though I had the privilege wherein I did not have that expenses of, paying rent or paying on food, because I was staying with Tarun itself.
Got it. And I'm assuming you were not married?
Yes, right. I was not married, so no liability as such. But eventually, when the model got changed and we moved into the FMCG side, and we were building D2C products, right? The products which has caffeine in it, shampoo, face wash, moisturizer, right? At that time, since it's been almost a year, there was a lot of pressure from the family wherein, you need to get married, you need to settle your life, what you're doing, right? You have already spent 1.5 years in your career doing what you wanted. So that was a pressure wherein I have to again move back to Oyo. Plus at that time, there was no buzzword of D2C, which can give me a lot of conviction कि यार ये model चलेगा कि नहीं, ये धंधा चलेगा कि नहीं, right? So that's how I again came back to Oyo, wherein again learned how a scale happens in a startup. Wherein when I joined, it was, I think, Series B funded, and then eventually funds got infused.
Why did you leave M Caffeine?
Again, there were two reasons. Number one is there was family pressure in terms of settling down in life. The number two was I did not have that conviction.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. I thought you were also not getting paid. So.
No, so that is I think secondary, right? पैसा तो कमा सकते हैं if you have conviction and if you have time to invest.
Got it.
That is the philosophy I have.
So you moved back to Oyo and
Right.
Learned more about scale. Yeah?
Yes. So I played the role of adding on supply. So I was taking care of supply, I was taking care of expansion, I was taking care of growth at Oyo. And then eventually when I spent around 2.5 years at Oyo and then had a short stint with Quicker and then went to Go Mechanic. Now in Go Mechanic, I was actually leading the sales and partnership vertical for Go Mechanic. So again, coming back कि यार धंधा तो करना ही था, अब कब करना है? That was the major point. And when I worked with Pepsilons, I worked with Oyo, I worked with Quicker and Go Mechanic, I had a plenty experience wherein I thought now it's the right time to start a business. Right. Now if you know कि यार now it is right time and you have the financial background and stability in your bank account as well कि यार पैसा है 2-2.5 साल कुछ भी नहीं मिलेगा तब भी चलेगा.
Got it.
But still I always had that conviction कि यार जो भी build करो वो ऐसा build करो जो कि long lasting हो. I don't want to go out with a product saying कि यार अगर मुझे पैसा नहीं मिला या मैं पैसा रेज नहीं कर पाया या मेरा प्रोडक्ट सर्वाइव नहीं कर पाया I'll fail quickly, right? And I have to again go back and join some organization.
Got it. So I'll just like to I would like to summarize it. So one is what time you start and you looked at factors like no liabilities, no loans, have a backup of 2.5 years if you don't even earn, right? So
right,
that solves the timing part. Then second is what idea to get into. Then you are looking at something that is long lasting, that is fulfilling, and that is scalable.
Right.
Got
right.
it. Cool.
So now the main point was क्या शुरू करना है, कैसे शुरू करना है. So at that time I think the COVID first wave came in, right, and there was a lot of layoffs that was happening at various places, particularly in the non-tech space, and I used to get a lot of resumes from my colleagues who have worked with me कि यार कहीं refer कर दो कुछ कर दो, right? And eventually at the time I also explored a lot of ideas in terms of कि कुछ D2C brand build करना. I need to think of a product which has certain innovation in it, certain differentiation factor in it, but I could not find it, right?
Got it.
And eventually when both the things were happening together, right, I eventually thought of helping these guys, right? Now when I started and helping these guys, then actually I learned the idea of how does a HR consulting firm work.
Helping in what sense? So you had candidates
Exactly.
who wanted to get
Right.
placed.
Right.
Then how did you help them?
So again, network effect, wherein I knew someone who has started off, who is at a good place at some other company, right? They need resources, right? Matchmaking, it's basically, right? So everything was in the network effect, but eventually then I learned how an HR consulting firm works, right? And that's how the idea actually started, and then I thought कि यार करना तो है ही, and this is a pure play business which people also say it can be a lifestyle business also, wherein it's a B2B business and a profitable business if you run it, if you know how to run it, and if you have the understanding of the market. Right. And then I met Jalaj, right? So Jalaj is also one of the co-founders with me in Consult Bay. I told him the idea, right, that we need to start, and then me and Jalaj actually started the company from very basic point of view.
Jalaj, and can you give us some numbers now? When you did this calculation or when you were leaving the Go Mechanic,
right,
that hey, I have a net worth of 2.5 years that I can survive, and how much you were planning, how did you figure out कितना खर्चना है कितने महीने, जला जाएगा तो कितना लेके आएगा साथ में, and was you also in that same zone as you? Just give us the details.
Got it. So in terms of, if you look at starting up an HR consulting firm, it does not take a lot of money to invest, right? If you are full hands-on, and if you can take the burden initially to scale at a certain level, and then probably once the money comes in, you can actually onboard good resources who can offload your task as well, right? So I think the capital that was invested was pretty less at that time, and we were profitable from I think 6th or 7th month of the business itself.
Got it.
Right, and though we did not took any salary just to grow the business, we started taking salaries post 1.5 years. But again, starting that business does not need much of the money that needs to be invested.
Got it. So basically, you were doing matchmaking, candidates were
Right.
coming, companies were
Right.
coming, you were setting a process and maybe some hirings that you were making.
Right. So we also defined our USP. We also defined how do we differentiate ourselves with other companies. We followed the first principle thinking, wherein we broke down the complete recruitment process. This is sourcing, this is recruiting, and this is account management, right? So breaking down the complete process actually bring on the lot of throughput in the system as well.
Got it. While you were doing all this, right? Curious to know, what was the reaction of the family for the first 1 year?
So when I started Consult Bay, my wife was 9 months pregnant, okay. And so you can also imagine at that time there would be very less or low support, you can say, from the family.
Or you were supposed to support them.
Exactly, I was supposed to support them, but eventually I managed to, get the confidence of the family. Though my wife was supportive, father and mother also took some time to digest and build on the confidence.
Got it. So after building it for 1.5 years, you started drawing salaries, right? So what changed now? You, as being a co-founder myself, I understand, right? You are again back to being an employee or drawing salary from the business, right? Because business should keep on feeding the profits in itself, right? For itself to grow.
Right.
So now what changed? Now how do you see business? How do you see your financial goals?
Right.
Are these different? Are they same?
Got it. So if you look again at the starting, wherein the intent was to start something and then think of scalability and taking it on a long-term perspective, right? So while starting and making it profitable, I achieved, let's say, day one goal, right? Now again I need to have a certain level of scale. That scale again started coming with staff augmentation part. The third level of the business is the product that we are building in the AI ML space and the solutions that we are providing to the B2B clients. That would be a real scale for us in the complete business, right? So investing back in the business has always been the philosophy, wherein if you want to grow and bootstrap your business, but pretty much financially stable in terms of you can say the salaries and everything, it's quite stable.
Got it. Now let's talk about investments in general. Okay. Assuming when you started working at Tata Steel, you started investing from that day, like you told us before we started, right? So what were your thoughts on investments back then, and what are your thoughts today, and how that journey has been?
Got it. So during the time when I joined Tata Steel, there was no thought of investment, right? The Tata Steel pays decent amount, right? And the money was flowing in, wherein I had a few of the peers with whom I used to, invest in stock market, right? And at that time, we used to do intraday as well. We used to do long-term investment, short-term investment as well. So from there, I learned the basics of stock market. But again, I did not invested much of the time wherein I need to think a lot on investment, because I got a lot of support from my father, from my brother, right? They were a pillar saying कि यार यहाँ invest कर दो, or a guiding factor for me in the initial stage, right? So based on that, the investment was not much diversified, but yes, it was a decent investment wherein I had the savings, and the perspective was also to have the money in account wherein you would need it because you need to start something on your own, right? So that amount would actually be required. You cannot put all the amount which can be diversified into, let's say, high risk bucket or a very long-term perspective, because there should be certain set of amount which would be required when you're starting something on your own. So that was also one of the funda or philosophy at that time while I was having in the initial career time.
Got it. So when and this is a question we ask everyone, right? When do you find time? So assuming you had time to do these trades or think about investments at Tata Steel, but when you joined OYO, where it would have been very much fast-paced work, right? And then different startups. How did you manage your investments or bandwidth?
Got it. So at that time, I think much of the inputs were given from the family side as well, right? The major investment or diversification when I started, or the time that I invested putting in the investment side, was primarily in last 5 years, right? So let's say in last 5 years, I actually started in putting in my time and bandwidth to diversify, learn things, and start investing accordingly. Because otherwise, initially it was primarily, let's say, PPF, savings, or let's say there was few land that is being purchased at my hometown, and my father suggested invest this money here and that. So that's how it started. But in last 4 or 5 years, the diversification basically started.
Got it. So does your father also calls you and say, अमित कितने पैसे हैं यहाँ पे, मेरे को अच्छी जगह दिख रही है, बेच देगा इसमें?
हाँ, exactly. मतलब we are pretty much open in terms of discussing these things, right? Wherein the opportunity, we do not want to lose any opportunity as such.
Got it. So why started only 5 years ago? Any comfortable point you reached, or what made you like think of it more diligently?
So I think the major reason would be the bandwidth crunch, number one, right? When you are working at a very fast paced startup and you need to put in a lot of blood and sweat in the company, right? There is a bandwidth crunch. And second, once you pass on, let's say 5-6 years in your career, then actually you have started accumulating wealth as well, right? And then you start planning कि यार now अब पैसा थोड़ा सा बढ़ गया, क्या करना है, right? अब और क्या करना है? So that's how you start thinking of it.
But Amit, interestingly, like we were discussing as well, but most of the folks that I know or we interact with, right, start like after like 4 to 5 years of their professional experience, where they have built some savings, etc. What's your view? Should like people start beforehand, like when they start earning the very moment, or even like if we go by some sayings, right? The best time to invest was 20 years ago, and next best time is today.
One of the learning that I took was, or the learning when I think seeing my financial journey is, people should actually start thinking of investment early in their career itself. जितना जल्दी जो सोचेगा उतना better है to plan it in a better way and think from a long-term perspective as well. So diversification, starting your career is very important.
Got it. So thank you for sharing like what made you start investing. Then what was the philosophy? Now seeing either you were trading like 11 years ago, or you started investing, diversifying, right? What was the philosophy? How are you trying to upskill yourself around investments? And has that changed now? So want to understand how did you go?
Right. So if I look at a few people who generally start investing in stock market, they generally say कि यार मैंने आज ये शेयर लिया और ये तो कल गिर गया, ये गिर गया तो मैंने बेच दिया, जब मैंने बेच दिया तो फिर शेयर ऊपर चला गया, जब शेयर ऊपर चला गया तो फिर मैंने खरीद लिया कि अभी ये और ऊपर जाएगा, बट वो फिर नीचे चला गया, जब नीचे चला गया तो फिर मैंने बेच दिया. सो इट्स अ विशियस सर्कल वेयर इन पीपल एक्चुअली फंस जाते हैं उसमें कि यार क्या करें कैसे नहीं करें. सो इट्स मोर और लेस वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू स्टार्ट लर्निंग अबाउट इन्वेस्टिंग. राइट नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज कि कैसे शुरू करोगे कि यार क्या करना चाहिए क्या नहीं करना चाहिए. सो इट्स मोर अबाउट you need to dedicate your time, you need to dedicate your energy to start learning on it, right? So you need to So what I did was I started listening to, let's say, CNBC Awas, right? Started with generic news content, G News, right? Started following up few of the guys who used to give gyan on finance, and start learning from them. So that's how it actually started. कि यार क्या options है wherein you can actually diversify. What is your risk taking capability? कि आपको अभी क्या करना है, बाद में क्या करना है? What is your long term goal? What is your short term goal? That's how actually I planned, and still there is a lot of things that needs to be done in coming 4-5 years. What I think is in terms of diversification.
Got it. Just I want to really discuss how do you figure out your long term goal. For example, there are so many ideas floating around. You have financial goal to retire, you have financial goal to buy a house or improve your life by buying luxury items. How do one define their long term goal? Is there any method or anything that you can suggest?
I think it more or less also depends on the curiosity of that guy or the aspiration of that guy, right? So defining a long term financial goal as a common goal for everyone is not possible, right? Everyone has certain aspirations, and against that aspiration, this long-term financial goals also keeps on changing, right? If let's say I started my career, I passed out and I was working at Tata Steel and I will retire from Tata Steel, right? Now you can foresee your wealth that you can actually earn, and then you can also diversify कि यार कितना सेव कर पाऊंगा, कितना बाइफरकेट कर पाऊंगा कि कितना सेव होगा, कितना मैं खर्च करूंगा, and then you create your goal, right? You more focus upon savings, you more focus upon right sort of investment. But let's say a career like me wherein there is a lot of ups and downs, right? Starting a startup, joining a startup with no salary, to building your own startup as a bootstrap company, setting up a very long-term goal is very difficult as of now. So it actually depends on people to people, how is their lifestyle, what do actually they do as of now.
Got it. Thank you. After like figuring this out that you have this goal, you started investing. Any failures that you faced or any mistakes you made in your investments?
Yeah, I think again जैसे मैंने बताया कि वो आप स्टॉक खरीद लेते हो तो गिर जाता है फिर बढ़ जाता है. Initially, while investing in stock market, I failed. I did not understood the fundamentals and technicals of the stock that I was buying, right? That was one of the learnings that I eventually took it. And apart from that, I think I have been an investor which is pretty much stable and not very high risk taking. I would actually say कि your portfolio should not be more than 10% wherein you invest and high risk and high return sort of thing. So 40% should be wherein you need to play with medium risk and good return, and 50% is the stable investment and stable returns.
Got it. And can you explain what all things you tried apart from stock market? And
so if I need to bifurcate the portfolio, I think since I've been investing majorly in PPF since I started my career itself, right? So PPF and NPS sort of investment would be somewhere around 25 to 28%. The land property investment should be somewhere around again 25%. The savings would be somewhere around 15 to 18%. Gold somewhere around 2%. Startup investment 5%, or let's say other alternative investment, let's say 2%. So that's how the structure is bifurcated. But what I feel is in next 4-5 years, the alternative investment channel would eventually grow, right? Eventually, I would also probably grow in terms of the more high risk taking investment as well. But it eventually would depend how much money would be earning in next 5 years.
Got it. What would you say was your go beyond moment in investment or in life? Go beyond is something that is a tagline at Grip. Go beyond inflation. Go beyond volatility of stock market. So just wanted to understand your go beyond moment.
So I think the go beyond thing would be don't settle for less. All right.
Interesting.
You should diversify. You should understand. You should build your own knowledge. And don't settle for less. That is what I think should be the go beyond movement.
Got it. So we have this interesting question we ask everyone. If you are given 1 crore rupees today, how will you put this money in different asset classes, and what will be the bifurcation?
So I think again it would depend in terms of what is your investment philosophy. Being an investor, wherein I would say 10 to 15% again in the high risk bucket, 35 to 40 would be in the mid range bucket, and rest 50 should be a secured amount, wherein though the return is less but it is decent.
So Amit, having worked in the middle, right, with Consult Bay, people have different strategies in mind when they look at their career. Some people like to stick to a company for very long, and then they shift or make their move, or they stick to that company only. And the other kind of trend is where some people work from 2 to 3 years and keep on changing. So what do you think work in long term? What really creates wealth? I think ultimately it's all about wealth creation and satisfaction, right? What do you think creates wealth in this process?
So I think learning is one of the most important factor, right? If you say that you are working in a company for 5 years, 8 years, right, and you are not able to learn new things, or you are not able to change your goals of learning, wherein let's say you were specifically into sales, or you need to either specialize into sales as well. You need to have that sort of learning in your career when you spend 6, 7, 8 years as well in the life, right? The learning in the organization is very important. Number one, once the learning stops, you need to actually start thinking कि now it's time to change. The money can always be secondary, because if you have that eager to learn things and grow your skills, and these skills primarily what I suggest should always be multi-dimensional skills, right? You would actually start creating wealth, right? Either in the same company or else probably switching the companies.
Got it. So basically for even those folks who stay for long, right, they are able to figure out to upskill themselves or figure out ways in the existing organizations they are learning more and more by figuring out new skills or new dimension of the work. Got it. And any sort of advice for all the, I think most of our listeners are in 25 to 35 age bracket. Any sort of advice for those folks so that they can
I think
really great in career?
The advice that I would suggest to the folks that are in 25 to 35 is you should always be curious enough to learn things. You should always have your aspirations high. Now, if you are curious and your aspirations are high, you would eventually progress in your career, whether you stay in a company, you switch a company, or you start your own startup, right? But if you miss these two basic things, you would eventually not enjoy much of your time as a professional career, right? Because if you see, you have 24 hours in a day, right? Out of those 24 hours, you actually spend 12 to 14 hours focusing on your work area or your professional life, right? That is a majority of the chunk of your time. But until unless you are not aspirational enough or you are not curious enough to learn things and grow yourself, this enjoyment of your work and your growth will eventually suffer. So basically, people who are starting their career till at least 10, 12, 15 years, you should be very bang on in terms of कि क्या करना है, क्या सीखना है. Does not matter कि कितना time देना है. It will eventually depends कि output अच्छा होना चाहिए.
Got it. Cool. And with that, I would like to summarize what we learned today. So we learned that if someone wants to start up their company, they need to understand their background, their financial background at that moment, if they have any liability, any loans, and how comfortable they are to let go of their salaries for next 2.5 years. At least that's how much Amit had in his mind, and then had the courage to start something. And then that should marry with the idea that hey, this is the idea I would really be interested in starting up and would be interested in spending my time on, and then accordingly building and manifesting for that work or that startup. And another learning is that always keep on diversifying your risk, be it money, be it investment or this startup. As Consult started with just one hiring agency, now diversifying into staff augmentation and other SaaS products into AI. So thank you very much, Amit, for that. And
thank you. Yeah,
I think that's the end of the episode. Hope you all liked the episode today and had a chance to learn something. In case you have doubts, please feel free to comment in the comment box and our team will revert to you. Till that moment, get a grip on your money and go beyond. Thank you.